Good morning. Boker Tov. Thank you, Alex. My gosh. You know, the way he was leading into that, I did not think my name was going to come at the end of that paragraph. I was genuinely caught by surprise. No, thank you. Well, thank you and welcome. I'll say it again. Welcome to day 2 of the inaugural JNS International Policy Summit. It's been thrilling for us to host so many important figures who share our concerns about the future of Israel and the United States. We've heard already from so many important voices during our first day, not least from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. And today we'll hear from even more great speakers, such as new U.S. Ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, our former colleague and dear friend, Caroline Glick, now a key advisor to the Prime Minister, Pastor John Hagee, and many, a cast of thousands, as they used to say in Hollywood. All of us who have gathered here for this summit, including the Prime Minister, members of his cabinet, the new ambassador, and so many other leaders, thinkers, and writers, as well as all of you who have come to Jerusalem to hear them, are faced with an important set of questions. We're met at a time of unprecedented challenges for the Jewish people, for Israel, and the United States. More than 18 months ago, a Hamas-led Palestinian Arab terrorist assault on southern Israel was more than a barbaric set of atrocities. It was the initiation of a new war on Israel's existence unlike any other in its history. Not only did it inflict a traumatic loss of life, terrible crimes committed against the innocent, and the kidnapping of more than 250 Israelis, it also unleashed a wave of anti-Semitic hate throughout the globe, most particularly on American college campuses, where Jewish students became the targets of violent pro-Hamas mobs who sought to silence, shun, intimidate, and threaten them. Thus, this latest round of the conflict is not just another border skirmish or a terrorist atrocity to be dealt with but then quickly forgotten until the next set of attacks comes at a time of the enemy's choosing. While the wars of survival that Israel fought in its early decades were existential in nature, as Arab armies sought vainly to push the Jews into the sea, the challenge we now face is in some ways far more insidious and dangerous. In the late 1940s, 50s, 60s, and even into the 1970s, Israel was embattled. But Jews abroad, especially in the West and even in the United States, were not subjected to the kind of hounding and delegitimization that they are now facing. Today, fueled by the fashionable, toxic left-wing ideologies of critical race theory, intersectionality, and settler colonialism, and the woke catechism of diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, are having a devastating impact on a generation of young people. So much of this generation of young have been indoctrinated in the neo-Marxist idea that the world is divided into two forever warring groups: people of color who are always victims and always in the right, no matter what they do, and white oppressors who are always in the wrong, no matter what they do or don't do. These people look at the world, and no matter what they see only a race war, in which, however illogical their reasoning, however divorced this intellectual construct is from the truth about the Middle East, Jews, and Israel, they believe are inevitably part of the white oppressor class that must be defeated and destroyed. This is why this targeting of Jews has been tolerated and encouraged by the administrations of elite educational institutions. But it is also why these attacks on Jews are depicted in the mainstream corporate press and even many outlets that purport to represent and serve the Jewish community as merely the well-meaning activism of idealistic progressive youngsters who should be heard and validated rather than labeled for what they are, a mob of deluded supporters of a genocidal movement that is not so much analogous to the Nazis, but their successors, who believe that one Jewish state on the planet is one too many. So while Israelis continue to fight for their lives against Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, as well as their paymasters in Iran, Jews elsewhere are also now under siege. This set of dilemmas has also set up a new set of challenges for journalists, and one that, unfortunately, most of them are failing to meet. For not only has the woke left undermined education, it has also wreaked havoc on the media, as in the last decade, a generation of journalists has entered the profession believing their duty is activism on behalf of leftist causes, rather than the traditional search for truth. Whereas media coverage of Israel and the Middle East had often been biased in the past, and much of that slant was due to ignorance of the history and the context of the conflict, or manipulation by Palestinian fixers, or just plain sloppiness and laziness. But in the age of woke journalism, those already serious problems are now compounded by a false belief on the part of many in the newsrooms or most major outlets that Israel is a white oppressor state and that the Palestinians are powerless victims who have no agency in deciding their conduct or their fate. That is the formula for not just a biased media, but also a media that is completely uninterested in learning about the reality of Israel or Israeli and Palestinian society. Like faux journalist Ta-Nehisi Coates, a much lauded writer who turned a 10-day trip to the region into a book published a year after October 7th, but which never mentioned October 7th, Hamas, or terrorism, today's best and brightest in journalism aren't interested in reporting and fairly evaluating both sides of the conflict. They think their job is merely to regurgitate anything that might confirm a predetermined conclusion that Israel is a replica of the Jim Crow South. Far from an outlier, Coates is emblematic of the way so many people at major print and broadcast media think. In such a media environment, accurate accounts of the facts, context, and sober reporting are not only rare, they are essentially deemed undesirable by most of those who inform Americans about the news, and this is also felt in the media around the world, and yes, here in Israel too. Moreover, the prejudicial, race-obsessed account of Israel, utterly divorced from the reality of a war that has nothing to do with race, but everything to do with genocidal Islamist beliefs, is almost never conveyed to American media consumers. It also filters down into social media, where so many people get, nearly all young persons get their information about the world. Why then be surprised that polls show that even as young people, young Americans anyway, are trending more conservative in their politics than their elders, nearly half of them side with Hamas, a genocidal organization of murderers, rapists, and kidnappers with medieval attitudes about the world rather than with a liberal democratic Israel. Sadly, much of that prejudice also makes it felt among American Jews, many of whom know little or nothing about Israel or the reality of a conflict that the Palestinians have no interest in ending on any terms other than Israel's destruction. Nor are all too many of them aware that the plain fact is that it is the Jews who are the indigenous people of the land of Israel, and no one else. In a media and cultural milieu in which false narratives about race invariably prevail over facts, and lies about Israel obscure or deny the justice of the Zionist cause, what chance is there for journalists who want to practice their craft honestly? Well, if that's your goal, you're not likely to get a job at the New York Times or most major outlets. Indeed, to sum up the situation of the American media, there's good news, there's bad news rather, good news, and some even better news. The bad news is that not only is anti-Israel media bias worse than ever, but in the case of mainstream corporate media, it's not fixable, since contemporary journalists aren't just making mistakes out of ignorance that can be corrected, but are deliberately skewing the news against Israel in order to make it conform with their false, woke, activist beliefs about the world. The good news is, as the 2024 U.S. elections proved, the mainstream media no longer matters as much as it once did. We can't make it better, and it's a waste of time trying to fix it. But these leftist dominant outlets are also increasingly the dinosaurs of journalism. While some of them, like the New York Times, have a profitable business plan geared to cater to the political left and the credentialed elites that are the backbone of the left, their influence is declining and increasingly limited to those already inside the liberal bubble. The even better news is that there are now a growing number of alternative news sources that, far from being outliers, are now the only ones that you can actually trust to give you fair, honest, and truthful accounts of the world. I'm proud to say that JNS is one of them. And our incredible growth in the reach of our articles, our unmatched array of news and opinion, as well as our growing lineup of popular podcasts, is testimony to the hunger for honest journalism that exists today. At the core of our mission at JNS is a relentless dedication to giving our readers, listeners, and viewers the truth about Israel, the Jewish world, and the United States. Our success is linked to our belief that integrity and reliability, rather than the mere pursuit of clickbait, is the path to success. Our privilege in a world where so many claim that one must always acknowledge your advantages is that it is our job to tell the truth, rather than to distort it, to conform to ideologies that enable hatred and anti-Semitism. Sadly, this is a time when so many journalists and Jews are still prepared to bow down to the false gods of woke DEI culture, to the point where they're even opposing governmental efforts to defend Jewish students against anti-Semitism. They actually oppose efforts to end the reign of leftist indoctrination that seeks the destruction of Western civilization and the values of the American Republic, as well as the oppression of Jews. But that also means that there is a crying need for a home, for a journalistic outlet that has the courage to speak the truth. And courage is our most important value. That is the underserved niche of the media world that we at JNS are here to fill. We will not falter in this effort, and I know you, our supporters, readers, listeners, and viewers will stand with us and continue to give us the resources to continue this fight. With God's help, I know we will not only continue to grow, but that we will ultimately prevail. Thank you.